he was here when NA started in Memphis, Tennessee. I think he picked up his 30-year key tag at the last convention here. And Joseph has some things he's going to talk about, and at the end we're going to have some question and answer sessions, so hold your questions till then if you don't mind. We are recording this, so during the question and answer period, please come up here and speak to the laptop. All right, with that, I'll introduce Joseph.
I'm an addict called Joseph.
Hey, Joseph.
I'm honored to be asked to come and participate in anything. Before recovery began in Memphis, I was around, and being clean was just not shooting dope. You could take anything, drink anything, but the institutions that were in Memphis considered yourself clean as long as you weren't using a needle. And that was the first thing I let go of, and I called an ambulance on myself because I thought I had accidentally killed myself. And instead of taking me to the hospital, they took me to a place called Tennessee Psychiatric, which is Memphis Mental Health Institute these days, which I think is gone now, and said that I was just crazy. I had an overdose. And from there I went to, because I was living out of my car, and I went to the Salvation Army. And that's where I heard my first 12-step meeting that they were bringing into that meeting. And that's where I got on marijuana maintenance. So I stopped drinking then, and then that's all I did was smoke pot. And that was leading me down the road to do other drugs, and it was about to kill me again. And somehow I wandered into the public library on McLean and found Narcotics Anonymous that the World Service Office had sent the name and number and address, P.O. Box. And I called them collect, and they accepted the phone call. And that's when I began to get, after a week or so of calling every day, I got clean over the phone. And the fellow Jimmy Kay, one of the co-founders of NA, was the guy that answered the phone there at that time. He was the only one in the office. We were small all over the world. At that time, we only had meetings in certain parts of the United States, and one or two little meetings in England, a meeting in New Zealand, and that was it. There were no meetings anywhere else in the world. And he told me that if I was going to stay clean, that I was going to have to start meetings and go and talk to institutions and tell them about Narcotics Anonymous and what addiction is and what recovery is. And he explained that to me. And from then, our first meeting was at Memphis House, which is a recovery center here in Memphis. That's the only place that would let us meet and have meetings. And meetings with there, I would have to go, because it was only me, pick people up, take them to the meeting, start the coffee, and go and pick more people up and bring them back to the meeting, and then do the same thing after the meeting. And that went on for several months or almost a year, I think. I'm not quite sure about that. And all this time I was calling Jimmy Kay collect to stay clean and find out about what recovery was. And he said the next thing you have to do is in 79 is go to the 78, go to the World Convention in Atlanta, Georgia, where he said you're going to find other clean addicts and find out what recovery is really about. And so I didn't know what the World Convention was, so I went to it, and that's where I met my first clean addict other than myself, was in Atlanta, Georgia in 78. In 79. September of 79. I made a note of that date so I could try to remember it. And there I met some people down there that started talking about we needed a book of our own, because we were using another fellowship's book in our meetings, because that's all we had. And he said we needed to write a basic text on freedom from active addiction, and it was going to be a we book. And I was thinking the wee book meant a real small book. and I went on like that for a long time because I didn't want to ask them questions. I didn't want them to think I was stupid and didn't know what being clean was and what NA was. But it was we, you and I, and everybody else, not a small book. And so I got over that one. And they would ask me how long I'd been around. I'd say, well, I've been around a while. Because I was real embarrassed and real intimidated. And I spent half my time up in the room walking in circles, smoking cigarettes and freaking out. Because these people would come up and want to grab you and hug you. And the only thing hugs meant to me is sex. So I thought everybody was looking for sex. So I was really freaking out. And he told me about this literature committee of Narcotics Anonymous and writing this basic text on recovery. And I like to read this out of the Gray Book, which was printed in Memphis, Tennessee, out of a workshop we did here in 1981. And remember, that's only after June of '79 when I got clean. I went and volunteered Memphis for everything, like we had a big fellowship. I would go and say, yes, we can do this and we can do that. This work is a product of 3 world conferences which were held between October '79 and February of '81 at Wichita, Kansas, Lincoln, Nebraska, and Memphis, Tennessee. In excess of 45,000 man-hours were expended at Memphis by more than 70 recovering addicts from 13 states to produce the final work. In addition, the Memphis conference kept 9 typewriters over computers, 2 photocopiers, 3 cassette recorders, 2 telephones, and a dictaphone. Anybody knows what that is? In almost continuous use, and used over 20,000 sheets of paper. So that's all we had to work with then. And out of that Third World Literature Conference, this book came out of, and it was sent out all around the world. But we only had about 1,000 addresses in the United States and around the world. Individual addicts had written into the office and this and that. They weren't even groups, they were just individuals. And we started getting input in, and out of our input we got in Memphis, we had a conference over Thanksgiving in November of '81 that this book came out of, the approval form. And we picked Thanksgiving to do that so more addicts come and participate and have time off and could come and work on the book. We had it in Memphis State. And there are some pictures on the internet of that, I understand. And so it shows how big a Memphis part played in writing the basic text. Because after this book, the basic text in hardback came out. So without recovering addicts in Memphis and all over the world coming to help here, just like the outreach committee, we were kind of like an outreach committee and didn't know it for the world. Just because one crazy old person and then one after another and after another came together to not use dope. And then right after that, we came up with a pamphlet that was written in Memphis called the Triangle of Self-Obsession in '81 and '82. And that's about the only piece of literature that went all over the fellowship that was had no changes in it. Nobody had any changes they wanted to make in it. So that made it through so many workshops. So Memphis has played a big part in writing the basic text of NA. And it certainly made my recovery possible. And my first sponsor was Jimmy Kay. And then he said, you need to start a helpline. So we and a couple other people figured out, what we wanted to do. We said, live. We wanted to live. So we went to the telephone company and said, we want a phone number that has live in it. And LIVE. And that's our phone number still today after 30-something years. 276-LIVE or live, or however you want to say it. And so that's how our helpline started. And it was just 2 or 3 people that would we set up to answer to the Suicide and Crisis Center, because that was the only contact we had, because so many of us were suicidal or had connections through different institutions in Memphis. So they answered our phone for us, and they had the phone numbers of other addicts clean, and they would get phone numbers and call us, and we'd call the addict back. And so that's how the early meetings got started. For Memphis House, our first meeting that got started was at St. Mary's downtown. And we had a buzzer on there because it was only homeless people and not clean dope addicts wanting to get into church and steal things. So we had to have a buzzer to get in, and that's where we had our first meeting outside. And then we went on and had meetings at Memphis Mental Health Institute, and then from there things started to grow. I can't remember who attended the first meeting. There's nobody else clean that attended the first meetings of the first couple of years in Memphis today that I know of. They may be somewhere else, but I don't know of them in Memphis. There's Jean and Butch and Chris and Lucy in the first 5 years started coming around, I think, that are in the room today. First 5 or 6 or 7 years that are still around, that are the only ones. But from 1 to 5 years, I don't know of anybody. Or 4 years. There's some people that are around that have, they're not here today, that are in Memphis. Terry B. and who else? Debbie B. and a couple people like that, not very many. So it was a struggle, and it really warms my heart today to see even how many meetings that we are in Memphis and how many people you see at some meetings. I isolated for many years, about the last 10 or 12 years, and became so depressed and despondent that all I did is stay at home, went to the grocery store, went back home, stared at the TV, and talked to nobody, would not answer the phone if it would even ring, and didn't even have cable. I only had 3 TV channels. So can you imagine you're staring at those 3 channels for 10 or 12 years, and that was it. Loving my dogs, talking to no one. It's amazing that I stayed clean until people like Lucy and Jean L. And Chris started harassing me when the 30th anniversary was coming up. You ought to come back and participate. And it was really a hard struggle to get out again, because treatment-resistant depression, when you don't take medication, is really emotional dilemma to try to survive your own emotions. And the last drug I really used before I got clean in June of '79 was antidepressant. And I realized that I couldn't successfully take anything on a daily basis to survive my emotions if I was going to live a productive, happy, arrest-free life. Because I had many arrests and many institutions. I think I had 15 driving under influence charges, but I had a good attorney, so every one of them was dismissed. I never spent more than a few hours in jail because I had a good attorney. And when my attorney finally said, "Proctor, no more, we're not going to do this," that helped me into trying to get clean, because without a good attorney, you were going to jail. And that's something I didn't want to do. And so when they finally started saying no to me, I didn't have my parents, they didn't say no to me, and I had no other people to say no to me. So my attorney was the main one. That's how Memphis got involved in writing literature, and that's how we got our basic text today. And golly, I don't know how many meetings we got. We're in almost every country all over the world. I see my old buddy Keith Norman back there. One thing that the committee wrote a little outline here to help me, because I have that early onset Alzheimer's disease, which can be taken very well. And they really think that I may have Alzheimer's, early onset. And that's something that really concerns me today, and keeping a good mental health attitude, and trying to participate in life and be a better person, and learn to love and to hug, and all the things this program has taught me. Principles for personality has always been a big thing for recovery. It's mostly been, in my past, principles for my own personality, to get out of my own way, to be able to like myself, to be able to love myself, to try to apply that to other people in an unconditional way. So that has been a foundation of my recovery, to try to put my principles that I've learned in this program before my own personality. I learned to cheat and manipulate at a very early age. I remember in the first grade, I put my little speller underneath the desk in front of me to cheat and not get caught. And I didn't get caught. So that was my first. I remember going back and doing inventories. I first learned to cheat, manipulate by that little first grade speller in the desk in front of me. And then I went on from there to cheating off of other people. And I cheated all the way through college. My college degree, my bachelor's and my master's all cheated all the way through, or I wouldn't have gotten it. I had the teacher's editions of the book. I was able to kind of manipulate and get those. We had all the answers in there. And sometimes they wondered how I got to that answer, because I didn't know how to do the work between the question and the answer, so I just made up crap to get to the, how in the world did you get that answer? Of course, I didn't tell them I had their teacher's edition, but it was a kind of manipulation all my whole life. And my parents were great enablers to me, because I was the only child, and they enabled me to the fullest extent. I remember one year in 1965, when I graduated from high school, I had a full scholarship to Mississippi State University that I got falsely. I didn't stay down there but about a year, because I spent too much time over at MSCW for women, and so I got kicked out of there. So my conning and my manipulation was starting to run dry on me, and I was losing my ability to con and manipulate, because the drugs were all involved. That's a little bit about myself, and a little bit about recovery in Memphis, and how a big part that you can be proud of that Memphis Fellowship played in making Narcotics Anonymous what it is today. Because it would not have had the book as we know it today without what happened through addicts coming to Memphis, Tennessee, and working on this literature. We would have had one, but who knows when and how, because before this book that we started working on, we had the little white booklet and 5 pamphlets. That's all we had, and 1 or 2 clean addicts, and that's all we had in the world. And so Memphis can be real proud of the part it has about what Narcotics Anonymous is in the world today. And as we as a fellowship did this, I never wrote one thing in the book. I still cannot transfer my thoughts into paper. What I did is help arrange for the copy machines, empty ashtrays, go out for food, set the chairs up, the tables up, arrange for this thing or that thing, to make a good atmosphere so other people can let their talents flow out and do what they can do. So anybody in any room can do whatever they can do to make recovery possible for themselves or somebody else, because that is needed. You never know what that extra minute you might spend or that extra thing you might do might be a good example for somebody else, as well as helping yourself in participating. We'd been up for 3 or 4 days in Memphis when Greg Pierce, one of the original members of NA, was in Memphis working on literature when this pamphlet, The Triangle of Exception, came up. And we were so obsessed we decided to write this pamphlet. And back then you could do stuff like that. And then we sent it to the Literature Committee, which I was on. I think I was the treasurer of the World Literature Committee at that time. I was. I'm even in the book here. To prove the point. So we stamped it for review only, printed it up with the printer, printed it up in the exact format as the other IPs, and sent it out, just like that. But it went out to so many literature committees around the world through workshops and everything, and it didn't even get changed, and it finally got approved. So God, good orderly direction, works in mysterious ways, and you never know what those ways are as long as you work on Hawks maintenance, which was the early meetings we had. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or take yourself too damn serious. Hawks maintenance with an S. Well, that's a little bit about me and a little about recovery in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm grateful that y'all listened and participated by helping me laugh at myself. And I'd like to thank y'all for asking me any questions that anybody has from each other or to me or anything. We could open the meeting to that.
Well, thanks, Joseph. Really appreciate your time. So my name's Glenn. I'm an addict.
Hey, Glenn.
I'll get the question started by asking, did Jimmy K ever come to Memphis?
No, he was in such a, his health was in such a condition that he didn't go anywhere. He may, of all the time that I've been around, I think he was only able to get out one time outside of Sun Valley, California, where the first office was. Some other longtime members, Chuck Skinner, which was the original member, came to Memphis and participated, and Bo Sewell, who I met in Atlanta, Georgia, Bob Barrett, the first black member of NA to stay clean, came to Memphis to help, but the main co-founder never was able to. But he did participate over the phone. And in the book, there's a line in the front of the book, I think it's still there, it says, everything is in its right season or comes in its right season. There's a line on the first page of the book, it's in there somewhere, that he sent in to contribute. He initially thought we shouldn't work on the book because he thought it was his book to write, but he could never do it. But he began to realize that we were doing his work for what he had done for us by keeping. He had the World Service Office in his living room, and checks for literature and everything were just pasted on his walls. And I went out there to see him and everything, just like we do things in our living room. That was the office, and that was the Worldwide Fellowship Nerve Center, just like any one of our living rooms. So.
Matthew.
Joseph, I really don't have a question, but more of a comment. I didn't realize you had been around as long as you have. And I just want to thank you because because of your dedication to the heart of fellowship in Memphis, it paves the way for all of us to be here. I'm so grateful for that because it took us to these rooms with these people and
thank you. I'm only one of a few. You know, there are others just like me that put so much dedication. And I was lucky to find those people, those few people, that were just as crazy as I was. And maybe still am. It was back to that we again. I had to be schizophrenic and have all these other thoughts in my mind. There were other people around. So, thank you.
My name's Glenn. I'm going to just to restate what Matthew said, because we didn't have him at the microphone. He was expressing his gratitude to Joseph for starting the fellowship in Memphis, and without Joseph and his work in the beginning, he wouldn't be around. So I'm going to walk around with this.
Thank you.
To the phone. Who has a question?
My name's Butch, and I'm out
Hey, Butch.
And I think this is true. Didn't the VRC stem from the literature workshop Thanksgiving week?
Yeah, our first region in Memphis was the Mid-South Regional Service Committee, and they were the ones that sponsored the November of '81 conference over Thanksgiving, and that's where the volunteer region came out of, and that's where the over Thanksgiving came out of. Originally, to write literature, and it turned in from a literature conference to a regional convention, and that's how that region got started exactly. Butch.
I'm Stephen O'Malley.
Hey, Steve.
I just have a comment and a question. Kind of like what Matthew was talking about, it blows my mind that you get the wherewithal. I mean, you call them, collect. You got to clean up the telephone. That's something I cannot fathom doing. How you took it upon yourself to start it. You did what they told you. That's what I've been hearing since I've come here. Do what is suggested to me. And that is proof positive. You save a lot of lives. You save a lot of lives for doing this thing. My question, I guess, is I don't know anybody else with 30 years clean. I know folks knowing Lucy and being kind of in the beginning. Do you still network at all with people with the same amount of same time as you, like in other areas at all?
Yes, here recently I've been in contact with other people in other areas. The literature was the key to me knowing other people all over the world. And I've had that great opportunity to know people all over the world. And I still do, from different states in the United States and Australia, where one of except my current sponsor are all dead now. And they lived in different places around the world. And we always got recovery over the phone and met up at conventions. That was a part of recovery. You must go to the next convention. There weren't as many as there are now. So that's where you had to go to meet other clean addicts together. You didn't have these rooms like we have today together. So it was very important to, and I still network with them, and I hear from them all the time. And when I isolated so long with my depression, before I came back this time, I lost contact with a lot of people, but they still call, and I've been in contact with them again. So yeah, thank you.
My name's Glenn. I'm an addict.
Hey, Glenn.
I have a couple more questions. Did Memphis area, as it was starting and getting established, help any of the surrounding areas within 2 hours, or say, between Nashville and Memphis? How did Memphis outreach to them to help them get started?
Yeah, Memphis did go just as clean addicts or some members that were active in the area. We went over to Arkansas. We went up into Tennessee. We tried to go down to Mississippi. Just much like your committee is doing. It wasn't called a committee then, but we got those like that road trip. We'd get in the car and go. But it was very hard unless there's a person or two that really were dedicated to their own recovery to keep those meetings alive. And you couldn't keep them alive from Memphis. We'd go, and then that meeting place would be closed, it'd be locked, and nobody'd be there. But since then, things have gotten a lot better. So we did do road trips. Thanks again for allowing me to share and be a part of it. It's helped me to come out of my myself, and sometimes I hear that the most important person in the room is a newcomer. I sometimes think the most important person in the room is myself, because if I can't take care of myself, I certainly can't help somebody else. So, thank you.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, thanks for and thank you all for attending. I look forward to the next few months in the outreach committee. And it's really cool to hear someone who was in Memphis in the beginning talk about outreach between the world and us in surrounding areas. Be sure and for phone cards, please stop by and put your name, claim date, phone number if you want to be put on the phone card. And unless you're 100% sure, don't put someone else down. But if you're 100% sure, you can put them down. All right, well, let's close.